for having us here. So this final panel is, first of all, has a very interesting title because it starts with the elephant in the room. And since we have already discussed in this conference all the critical factors for the success of a company, iGaming or tech or otherwise, starting from the local market, then proceeding to the regulations, the marketing, tech innovations and blockchain, we haven't really checked yet what it takes internally to move things forward and be successful as a company for the people who are building the success. So this is why we have with us today the human capital strategic consultants from the Center of Positive Influence, Katri Delimoge and Hanno Ahonen, who specialize in bringing together businesses and people for maximum results and for essentially building teams driving success. So could you please introduce yourselves to our cozy little audience here?
Well, hello. I would be Katri out of the duo then, in case you were figuring. So I think you captured really well our essence. So our mission very much is actually putting a big fat equation mark between everything business, everything people. And it's interesting times. I think currently many of the organizations are actually fixing their homes. So lots of opportunities that we're tackling currently. So this is for me.
Thanks for the intro. My name is Hanno, and I'm the traveling stooge of Katri here. And we really are hoping to make an impact in the world for people. And I think also one of the biggest things that we've seen is that this is kind of like the untapped potential that not a lot of organizations are really elevating. So yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you for being here with us, and let's make things interesting since we're such a very cozy audience. Let's start with a question. Since this panel is focusing on the hiring process, if my colleague Alex can show us a question for you to participate. Our question is, when you think about a hiring experience, whether as a candidate or as a hiring manager, what's the first word, feeling, or association that you have with this process? Please feel free to scan the QR code and type in your answers. Anything comes to mind. Don't be shy.
And there's no wrong answers, right? All the answers are correct. So whatever you're sharing here, then...
Liga, you're on the spot.
I'm going for it. Oh, nice. Yes. A break, so great. Okay.
Got one. Another's coming. I always love the diversity and variety of these different perspectives coming in. So, any more?
I think we're getting lucky here, getting more answers.
Hey!
All right.
I like that. Lots of deals here.
Love that. Yes, I agree personally, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I don't know if anyone wants to write anything, please feel free, but...
Uncertainty. Yes. Anyone wants to expand on these a little bit? What happens in this room stays in the room, right? So we're safe here. What's behind this? Or maybe you're looking at something that you didn't put there. What's your thoughts around that? What could be the story there? Or there's something that you're like, oh my God, I would have never put it there, or actually, that would be my second choice.
So we have... Okay.
There's a good balance of everything, right? It's a mixed bag. Okay, we don't get to talking now, that's fine. We're going to get there. Hanno, what would you put here?
I think for me, I mean, coming from that perspective, I think I would put processes and supply chain.
Okay, tell me more.
Processes in the sense that I've seen that is maybe, again, one of the biggest things that organizations might miss, because process is the basis of really getting the results that you're really, really hoping and wanting. And supply chain, in the sense, write it out. Whoever is part of your recruitment and talent acquisition processes, write it out on a piece of paper, and everybody needs to be on board, and the information needs to flow in that supply chain.
Cool. And actually, I'm taking it from a different angle. When I'm thinking of that, the first word that comes to my mind is surprise. And I think it's very much resonated with what kind of experience I've had. And surprises can be of different kind. I'm usually personally not a huge fan of surprises, but I just remember very vividly like two extremes. One being like I was hired into a scale up. I had a very good recruitment process actually. Lots of stakeholders, like C-level people, and I went to work. It was my first day, and nobody knew I was coming to work. So I was literally standing there in the hallway, and all the employees were asking who I was, and when I introduced myself and my title, they asked, "What is people and culture? Why are you here?"
So your first job, your first task was to actually introduce yourself in general and what you were doing.
Yeah.
No one saw it coming.
Absolutely. So I had two opportunities, run out of the door, like screaming, and look for another surprise to experience, or actually embrace that and give this sort of opportunity to educate and bring this human-centric sort of like understanding into the organization. I stuck around.
Amazing.
But a curveball for you, Maria. What is your...
Well, for me, I would say that the massive keyword is make-believe. My experience personally has been that the hiring process in general, from the candidate side, because I've also been on the hiring manager side, and then it was easier for me because I was just, learning as I went and taking all the challenging processes and all the negative experience that I had and my colleagues had, and just trying to be better. Okay, but when I was a candidate, it was as if this was just like a dance, and there was not really, a sincere, realistic process of someone actually seeking to hire someone, but it was just like going the moves. I felt that, there would be no result, that there would be no actual evaluation of who I was, what I had done, and, if it were just me, then it would be all right, because I would be like, yes, it can happen, I may not be the right person for these people, but I keep hearing and seeing the same thing happening to many people. So to me it's like the game, kids say playing house, but I think it's like playing office, with dolls and stuff like that. So that's my experience, not very positive, I must say.
Thanks for sharing, and everyone putting the keywords.
Yeah, and what I wanted to also say is that, the whole conference we'll be talking about compliance, PR, marketing, affiliate. Don't get me wrong, super important, but also I think the talent acquisition, we're all doing it at one point. I'm more than sure everybody who's also on the crowd, you have been a hiring manager at one point, right?
Or being a candidate.
Yeah, or candidate, yeah, whichever side, so, yeah.
So now, are we okay with the questions? Do you need any more?
I think I'm good.
Okay, so can we please start with the presentation? We have a couple of slides, nothing huge, but just to kick things off. So Alex, can you please click on the presentation? Thank you. Just the first slide. So just to be, on topic and keep things in track.
We're looking for an elephant.
It's
not in the room.
It's the camera one. Okay. So I think we pretty much acknowledge that the elephant in the room is that there are huge challenges that come with the talent acquisition processes, and that there are actual problems. Everyone had something interesting or negative to say. And technically, talent acquisition refers to the process of finding and hiring the right people to fill the right roles within an organization. So it's way more than just recruiting. It's about strategically aligning the hiring process, as you said, across all stakeholders for a company's long-term growth and success. And in this case, what's your experience with all this, with the challenges? Can you sharing practical examples of how hiring practices have directly impacted an organization's growth. In a negative way, apparently, since we're talking about the elephant.
Sure. Maybe the first thing as well, I mean, we're talking about the elephant in the room, but also in our world, we really want you to domesticate the elephant in the room and give it some food and water in a sense. And the perspective also that at least personally that I'm coming from, because I've been part of a relocation agency, and of course relocation and recruitment are super tight bonded with each other. And also I've recruited a rental workers, so outsourcing. I'm sure a lot of people have done that as well. And now with COPI, we're doing some projects as well. So we are outsourced recruitment help or talent acquisition, strategic help for them as well. But the experience is super wide, I would say. From my experience, I think things that really come to my mind, for example, when I was head of a relocation agency, and one of the guys was brought in, a pharmaceutical company in Estonia, and he was brought in from India, really educated, with PhD. Also his salary, I think it was like 16 or 20,000 euros a month. So heavy. But the most important part that the company, I already saw that beforehand. I think they have about like 100 people working, a lot of line workers, and in Estonia specifically, the line workers are usually Russian speaking. And he was brought in, the Indian guy was brought into the team, but even the HR was not speaking English.
So how could this work?
He left after 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was this, wasn't this apparent like from the start that this wouldn't work?
Sure, for me it was, but also the parent company was from Amsterdam, and they had the cultural thought that it's going to work, because they, like whatever their ideas were, from their perspective, they thought everything is fine. But I saw that already myself as well. I mean, I saw the glitches in there. I saw it beforehand, so I was trying to do everything on my end on the relocation side so that he will have at least a really good time, because there was also a wife. They were in their like late 50s or early 60s. I mean, so coming from India to Estonia, big shift, right?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I second that the elephant is something that I would love to have an elephant at home, and maybe I have loads, but it's exactly like the talent acquisition strategy. You need to nurture it from the start until the end. Otherwise, the elephant runs berserk, right? And then bad things start happening. But very practically, what I've experienced, for one, when there is a misalignment between hiring people just for skill and actually for the organization, like fitting their values and where they are on their journey. I give you an example. I went into a scale-up that was actually going into a very intense scale-up. And they were in the process of hiring loads of engineers. And many of the engineers that they were going to onboard actually had a corporate background. Very different what it looks like in a hardcore scale-up world, right? So they were coming in thinking that they're going to have like processes, procedures, everything established in place, very well work and life balance. Sorry, it doesn't happen in the scale-up world, so they left pretty fast. Huge investment was made, so it turned into a cost very fast. Another thing that very often what I see is also that people are getting very much like looked upon as the credentials that they have like on the paper, rather than what they can actually deliver. This is something that I'm very much guilty of myself. Like when I'm looking a few decades back, when I actually started first time hiring for my successor, a C-level like role, when I was like looking at the paper, amazing academic background, amazing certifications. You can look like 20 years, they're like sort of like having very high level titles. And when I spoke to the person in front of me, they really had never done the core of the job. So the way they were approaching was very academic. They could quote probably everything from academia, but approaching real life scenarios, they just didn't have the experience. So So really being very open-minded to look beyond the paper and actually seeing whether the person has the first-hand experience versus, what's on the paper.
So this sounds like a major, not just misalignment, but first of all, lack of leadership, lack of main vision on what we want to do, who we want to hire, why, what's the purpose, what are the realistic needs. And this spreads all the way down to the hiring manager and any recruiters involved. So this is what we're discussing here.
Yeah. And I think when we're having conversations with different organizations, C-level hiring managers, one of the things is for you to understand as an organization, are you trying to create culture fit? And culture fit means that you're hiring, attracting the same kind of a person, pretty much like yourself or the organization. So you're doing only, and I understand, there's no good or bad in it, right? Because culture fit is good. When you're a startup, you want to move really fast, then those people are going to get you to the next level, right? But when you're turning into that you're looking for innovation, for example, then you're already in the culture act, okay? Because you need to get these people that are coming outside of your role so that you will innovate.
You get the fresh perspectives. I've had my first-hand experience as well. Like in fintech, I went to one of the fintech when all the senior leadership, taking their names off, I was like, if I could look at their CVs, they came from the same schools, same industry, same level of experience, like everything was the same. And I was like, how did I end up here? I'm like completely from a different planet. And probably that was a very good accident in that sense, because it made us very consciously and strategically start actually thinking, what's going to get us on the next level? What kind of humans to join
Okay,
us?
so having identified all this misalignment, can you suggest any practical steps? Is there some sort of model, for example, just let me see if we can present a skeleton for that, to guide companies? I can use something like that. Hopefully it works. Or Alex will help me there.
Yeah. That's
Okay, do you think maybe it's my fault?
I've got a bad hand. It usually doesn't work. Oh, I was almost lucky.
Okay, Alex, can you?
Yay!
Okay, so
Magic.
yeah. To a more practical viewing of things and the recommendation for a strategy that, okay, no strategy is foolproof, but a guiding light. So this is, what do we see here?
Yeah, first of all, I love people, but I love my data and processes as well, because and you need to understand in real time how you're doing, what's working, what's not working, and adapt accordingly. So what you're seeing here is a 7-step model. And usually when talking to organizations or hiring managers, they're like, oh my God, 7 steps. Actually, a few years back, quite a few years back, I made a 10-step model for Silicon Valley, and they were okay. But in Estonia, like 7 steps seemed like a lot. But actually, it's breaking down the process very nicely, understanding like who's owning what part of the process, and makes it very clear. And I have to here quote one of my gurus, Brené Brown, who says like, being clear is kind, being unclear is unkind. And definitely having a streamlined process and very clear understandings for the metrics. What does successful, what does great look like? And it can be very subjective, but still like having a borderline understanding, how we're doing things, what's the process that is going to get us there, and what are the metrics that we're measuring. So we understand in real time what are the bottlenecks and what we need to adapt to.
Yeah, because I think here as well, this is just supplementary because, there's different models, right? So this is just one of the versions of how to take down the position.
Okay, but here we would start from preparing. Okay,
yes.
All right. Who does this concern? This preparation. Who should be preparing and how?
Yet again, what is your organization's supply chain? Like, it's different. If you have in-house, you have out-of-house. Is there, I don't know, maybe it's a one CEO only doing everything all by themselves? So it really, really depends on that.
But the preparation is basically whoever is going to hire for the team. Yeah. So I just want to say that the request or the order or the understanding, what, why, and who we're going to be hiring is actually for the person who's hiring for the team. So yeah, follow-on preparation, which actually includes what we use in term-wise calibration meeting, which is basically drawing out the avatar. Who's that kind of person? I usually start with the end in mind, okay, what do we need to achieve? Why is that role, for example, going to add value to our organization? And then like reverse engineering to understand who's the kind of human who's going to get there? What's the tangible skills and what's the values or the personality?
So in this step, there is a connection with the appropriate department. For example, we're hiring for the development department, we're hiring for the marketing department. So the hiring manager has the lead, but they need to consult.
Yeah, basically the term, I hate that, but I'm going to use it anyways because probably you all know that HR don't like people being resources, whatever it's called in any organization. But yes, what I want to emphasize that HR or people team or whatever you have, they are giving you the framework, the model, they're going to give you the tools, they support you on the journey, but the ownership of that and the request and the final decision is still the hiring managers to take care of.
Great.
Yeah, and you were asking about like indicators. Should we mention some of them?
About indicators about when something is going wrong, when we've lost the ball and track of everything.
Yeah, so I mean, we have like different sides, but I mean, one of the easiest is turnover, right? Is your turnover super low? That's also a kind of exclamation point in there, or is it too high? And I mean, the world has changed, right? Back in the day, I would say maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, like a really healthy turnover for an organization was around like 8 to 10%, maybe 12. But now we were just talking with Katri, and because of the world that we are not working in the same company for like 20 years anymore, right? So now even a healthy one is also like up to 15% turnover.
15?
15, yeah.
Even in tech field, so it's changed quite drastically. But I'm actually going a few steps even backwards or onwards. I know retention is important and that's sort of like the result, but I would really encourage everyone to be more proactive and start working with engagement already, like understanding what's the pulse, because once you're already getting into the stage that the person is leaving, that's clearly too late, right? We're already dealing with the results or the outcomes, so how can we actually prevent that? And even not going into the exit talks, but start thinking, for example, having stay talks, so actually understand why the people are working at your organization, what's driving them, and mitigating the risks, like knowing like, okay, they're going to be leaving, what's the succession plan like coming from that? That's one of the metrics. I love also looking at the quality of applicants, and that's really important because I very often speak to also hiring managers, and they're like, oh, this process was super successful, we had like 500 applicants. Okay, fantastic. How much you would hire out of them? None. Okay, that's not good, right? So sometimes having actually like, 10 applicants, but really qualified, you would be ready, for example, to hire like, 80% of them. That is like much better. At the end of the day, you probably don't need just one.
I think this is a fictional scenario though, because you can never have like 10 really good candidates and be ready to hire 8 of them.
It's not. I'm challenging you.
Really?
Yes, we just actually were closing like we thought really sort of like challenging position for a CTO, but like very high level in a very successful fintech, and we had 2 weeks, like literally to get the creme de la creme of the candidates. We had, I think, like 70 reach outs. We spoke to about like 20 of them, and we actually presented 6 candidates who would be like absolutely qualified to do the job.
Okay, this is amazing, and I like it because we're going into the very practical and daily side of things and examples. So speaking of expectations versus reality, so we discussed about how the hiring process can go wrong, and oftentimes companies just expect way too much, and on the other hand, the candidates are just looking for someone to work with some meaning, with some good value, getting back some value. But at the end of the day, we see the overqualified candidates, we see HR ghosting the candidates, we see very, very strict or even unrealistic expectations from the hiring manager side. How can companies really avoid those traps? And how can they work towards a more realistic hiring.
Can I add some more like numbers, because I think it's super helpful from the previous one. Just also giving, at least in the IT world, right now your process should be 3 weeks or less, right? In order to get the candidate. Also, if you do a take-home test, it shouldn't be more than, 7 hours is even like maybe too much. I would say keep it on 5 hours. If you do some sort of a take-home test, then 5 hours should be the max. Otherwise, you will have to drop off, right? They're not interested, it takes too long time, and they just not part of it. And also, I just wanted to also mention some of the applicant tracking systems that you can use, that I've used, and they work really great, they're easy to use. Workday, Bamboo HR, and Team Tailor. This is actually a Swedish company, right? And Gottlieb just told me also that Team Tailor has this site that you can tie your employer branding into it as well.
So you have like 2 in 1.
Oh, and in terms of tracking and database.
Exactly.
You get all the reports there. And
Yeah, because you don't need to do it like yourself anymore nowadays, right?
Yes,
Everything is numbers, but you have to use the system, because I was also part of a team, and we just brought in a new ATS system, and nobody really used it the way that it was supposed to. It's the same thing with CRM at the end of the day, right? And then it just kind of like fell apart, because the information was like one person was doing it, the other one was not doing it, so it's incomplete, right?
Okay, so I want to connect what we're discussing with the model there. And we moved from preparing to sourcing, now and with the right steps and tools, and then to engaging. So no more than a 3 weeks process with the interview. We have the right tools and testing, and then screening. Also, you need to keep your testing period short. And we come down to the selecting and hiring. So what are the pitfalls there when it comes to the final selection, to the final screening, and how do companies avoid that? What is like the ideal process, okay, quote unquote ideal?
I say what's not ideal is actually it starts already in the preparation stage. It's having not clear understanding, and it's very, very vague, and sometimes it seems like people are looking for an Ubermensch. And then you just go into like, okay, start thinking like what are the must-haves and what are the nice-haves. And I understand from the hiring manager's perspective, they want to have the top-notch person, and sometimes the lists are unrealistically long and it would be amazing, and then they want to start ticking off against that. And even if there's one thing missing from the list, they're like, no, they're not hireable. And having these calibration meetings, it all happens in the preparation stage, because when you've done like the preparation actually well, it definitely helps to succeed in the other stages. It doesn't guarantee, because we still have to keep the ball in our hand, but it's a very good foundation to start building on. And having very clear understanding and expectations, who's the person, and why we're hiring, and what's the must that they actually have to do.
And also like over here that we've seen a lot as well, that everybody commits. Remember I was talking to you about the supply chain and the process and who's been part of it. Like Gottlieb always says, like, okay, here's your, please give me 3 drops of blood, and this is done, we're moving forward, and then this is what we agree on. That's a lot of times, hiring managers are doing, trying to do their own stuff, and then it just doesn't match with the processes, so that's also a really, really important part.
Okay, so, and when it comes to this whole process, right now we are hearing a lot about, we've reached this point where Gen Z is dynamically coming into the workforce, and we hear so many complaints, so there is apparently a generational mismatch between like the older generations and Gen Z, for example, and how can businesses help redefine these recruitment strategies and bridge those gaps and work to a more unified process?
Wait until the alphas are coming. I've got an 8-year-old at home, and I'm like, oh my god, well, be ready for that. So that's going to be something else. But I think when we're talking about the generations, there are different things that we have to consider. We can look at the generations and the sort of stereotypes and biases that go with that. And obviously there's quite a lot of research where they're saying, we're talking about the millennials, we're talking about the second generation, like these are the trends, and obviously there's a lot of truth in there as well. But I always encourage also to be curious about the person once you already get into the conversation with them. because I've had loads of biases actually to program myself. I'll give you like an example, like usually when you're thinking of an IT person, what comes into your mind stereotypically, like there can be different versions, but I can share mine. Usually like quite young, sort of like a techie,
Nerdy.
Yes, nerdy, looks a certain way, introverted, all these kind of things, yeah? Wants to work like at home, doesn't like to socialize, all these kind of things. I have to say, I have recently come into contact with a lot of really, sorry, pardon my English, kick-ass, like I would say, older generation engineers who are not just super tech savvy, but they're also amazing leaders. And when I'm comparing also not just experience-wise, but their openness to new things, and I just don't mean technology, but ways of working with people, understanding that, it's amazing, it's really mind-blowing. So we really need to look beyond the generational part.
Okay, then let me just relieve you from that surprise, because working with developers and engineers in the past, as they were growing older and gained more experience, everyone was saying that, we want to work more with teams, leading teams, and work in the business side of things, because that's where they saw the future. So I guess they have started to catch on, and that's a great example of being proactive. So would you say that, oh, sorry, Hannah.
No. I also like one thing that I've heard with the generations, and let's bring in also employer branding here as well, right? Because a lot of information is out about employer branding. Love it, but I just want to puke all over it in this sense, because your employer branding is your culture. It's inside, and then you're just reflecting what's inside, and then you're elevating, and that's your employer branding. But a lot of times it's like, get me the best person, but is it the best person for your organization? Like everybody wants to have the Google engineers, right? But maybe your organization is not the best fit for them, even though they might have the best skills. But
yeah, I definitely add to that, because we get very often like called into organizations and they're like, can you help us with the employer branding? Okay, yeah, but you can put a lipstick on a piggy, but it's still a piggy, right? So what's happening home? And it seems like an easy fix, like let's, put the lipstick on a piggy and it's going to work. But at the end of the day, that's a huge investment or potentially a cost when you actually start bringing the people, into your organization.
And this is where there is this connectivity with the rest of the conference, because then we go again to the why, because if the company doesn't have the why down and their values down, there is no way to do employer branding.
Yeah, and talking about numbers a little bit, I don't know if you guys have ever thought about it, right? With hiring, of course, the most expensive part is the interviewing time, right? For everyone. I know that it's in between 30 to 50% of a person's yearly salary if there's a mismatch and if there's a miss of getting the wrong person into your organization. That's like tens of thousands of euros. I'm not willing to risk on that.
Or at least be conscious when you're going to do that. So.
And one last thought regarding this generational mismatch. Would you say that it's only a matter of focusing on the person, or that there is also much to invest in the onboarding process as well, and take into consideration that yes, perhaps a new generation will need another kind of guidance or more information or better information?
Yeah, definitely. Even the means digitally, for example. I'm just taking again a few steps back before we're getting into the onboarding, but recruitment-wise I've seen so often, let's say younger generations, they're like, oh, send me the information on WhatsApp or LinkedIn or whatever, we never read emails. Whereas maybe stereotypically someone who's from an older generation, they actually like to have a more formal way of communication or interactions. Today we're talking about this being an email or face-to-face. Again, this fintech that we've been dealing with, for example, they want to be super innovative, but they want to have everything happening office-based. So it's a huge struggle as well. So, okay, how far, what does it mean? What does innovation mean in your context? So it's the means that you're doing that, how you're actually communicating and tailoring that inside the organization as well, and how you're doing onboarding. Is there more they for example, some generations, they want to do it independently, watching videos, maybe some kind of gamification, and they're actually getting the onboarding experience from there, rather than having all this meetings, feeding people face-to-face and having different kind of interactions.
Okay, great. So we have established that the main person that has ownership and needs to be responsible and needs to be assigned from the start is the hiring manager for the whole process. But in reality, we have seen many times that, I mentioned that I was self-taught, people don't have some sort of formal training or a unified training and are not properly equipped to face the hiring process and have successful results. And would you say, what kind of training would you say that is sort of mandatory in order for the hiring managers to be effective?
Well, there's multiple ones, right? Since we talked about generational differences, one of the things that I also, as a recruiter, sometimes I have to kind of like recheck myself, because we have the stereotypes and we have the biases, right? So trainings on that, hugely helpful. For example, I was in a recruitment process and I saw that this one candidate was fantastic, but for some reason it was not clicking for him. And instead of like within that hour, you have an hour that you're making a decision based on that hour on that person, right? So now I'm actually kind of taking 2 steps back and I'm giving them the opportunity of like, okay, maybe it was not the best day, and I'm actually going to ask that from them afterwards. Hey, are you okay? Was it because I can see that like on paper, I see that you would be a good fit, but maybe it was not the best day. So giving those second chances as well and kind of rechecking yourself.
Yeah, in addition, obviously, we've spoken about streamlining the process, measuring in real time, all these kind of things. I really believe also in the structuring regarding like how you're approaching or talking to the candidates. The reason being, sometimes it's like I'm clicking with someone, but I'm having a completely different kind of conversation with the candidate rather than actually being able to benchmark it to a different conversation to someone else. So I'm already starting with actually unequal basis how I'm benchmarking them or deciding upon them. But with still having the structure, really think also about the questions, for example, that you're asking there. And make them yours and authentic and understanding why it's meaningful to actually get that information from them. I've been in different chairs in my life, loads. And as a consultant, obviously, you're being interviewed on an ongoing basis as well. But when I'm going back quite a few years, I remember I was in a process and I think they tried to do a Google on me. They asked me a question like, you're having a giraffe, lion, and I think it was penguin. They have to cross the road, and who are you going to like to cross first or whatever. And I think I chose a penguin. And I was like, okay, can you tell me like, what's the correct answer or what's the idea of the question? And they're like, don't really know. It was such an intriguing question, yeah. And I was like, okay, so did I get the right answer? And I asked them, like, what would you choose? And I think they said giraffe or lion or whatever. So I was like, okay, does it make me now unqualified because I chose the penguin? Or what's the value or meaning of the question actually? What is delivered?
What's the difference?
Yeah, but I actually also quite recently heard a very insightful podcast with Adam Grant, those that you know, Rethinking. Love Adam Grant, he's the organizational psychologist, and he had an interview with Danny Meyer. Danny Meyer is actually coming from a restaurant business in New York. He's built up very successful organizations. But I loved one question that I felt like when I heard the podcast, I was like, I hope someday someone's going to ask me that. And the question was, which I think ticks the boxes on so many levels, was what's the most common misconception that people usually have about you? And it really, I literally stopped at sport and I was like, okay, I love that question because it makes me self-reflect and actually step into the shoes of someone else and trying to figure out why they could see me in a certain, light. And is that how I actually want to be seen, or should I actually tackle that in a way?
That's quite deep, that kind of question there. So essentially, there is no specific structure, but you just need to know very well what you're looking for. You need to be realistic about who you want to hire and really measure up the whole process and the questions.
Yeah, very good point over there. Also, really important part is the scorecard. And this is something that you can put together with the people ops team, or if you need to do it all by yourself, maybe it's, you can have your own criteria. What I usually use, or what I've seen people using, you have kind of a 100-point system, and usually you have like maybe 4 or 5 different categories. I don't know, for example, like knowing some specific like an IT skill or language skill or personal skill, and then you evaluate that and you put the value on it, you know, percentage-wise. Let's say that IT skills are 45%, personal skills are 15%, and then you score.
Of the final decision.
Yeah. And then everybody's on the same page. And one of the tools that I'm actually using to make my life easier, and it also works, by the way, in business development really well, is Dripify. I don't know if you guys have ever used it. There's many different platforms out there. It's about, I think it was like 80 or 90 euros per month. So what you can do, you can actually tie it into with your LinkedIn, and in Dripify, you can, you know, send out an invite. I mean, there's different platforms, right? But that's just the most easiest to use. And you can put like different categories, either sending like a PDF or like a response to something, and hourly, you can just set up the supply chain in there. Really, really easy. Works like magic. And you can also send out, I think, like 75 LinkedIn requests per day. So you can go through a lot of people within 24 hours.
Like a drip campaign.
Yeah. Works fantastic. Yeah.
Perfect. And okay, we are about to close, so let's move to the fun part. And our experts here have.
We're also fun, Maria.
Okay, so our experts have prepared a series of true or false questions that I hope.
Turn around remote.
What do you mean?
Like,
oh, like that?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. We're here, so please enlighten us. Ask the questions to see what's true or false and what do we mean with every question. Like, it's an economic crisis, and today I have a queue of talented individuals waiting outside the door to be hired. No pressure at all. So is that true or false? What do you think, you guys?
False.
False? False.
Anyone thinks it's true?
Oh, I betrayed the
Okay, yeah, I accept. No.
But okay, so why is that false? So, I mean, someone could say that yes, it's a crisis, I have the talented individuals, I can hire anyone that I want because they're stressed, because I can drop the salaries, I can do whatever I want. But why is this false?
Yeah, well, this is the time when the piggy with the lipstick is living, right? I mean, I want to think that the crises are coming to an end to start with a new crisis at some point. I mean, that's life, right? But at the end of the day, talented people always rather have a queue themselves behind the door. And what we're really seeing at the market is like, you might have a queue of people, but then the question also arises, are they the right people for your organization? So again, the quantity and quality, there's a big difference in there as well. So today's scene, there's no queues behind the door.
Yeah, and also to fill one position, you need only one person.
Great, so we're going back to the model. And then we have recruitment is primarily an HR responsibility. True or false? What do you think, guys?
That's now testing what we were talking about. Were you listening?
False. I think it's primary is true.
Okay, so Lika says false. Betty, true or false?
If it's primary, then
True? Okay.
Guys, true? Why not? Okay. Very good.
Well, it's false. Sorry. Well, I mean, yes. Sorry, I'm not. Please.
And I think this is actually a really good example of the misconception because everybody who's part of the process are responsible of it. Everybody has their specific loop, right? As we previously were talking about. And also, the misconception, I mean, for hiring manager, they are making the decision, but they don't have like more responsibility. Yes, they have more responsibility in the decision, but everybody in this sense are equal, just the hiring manager will take the responsibility at the end.
I just add that HR or people or whatever you're calling their like function in your organization, they're giving you the tools, they're giving you the framework, they're giving you the support, but they're not deciding on behalf of you. The hiring manager knows who's the person you need in your team. So that's super, super important because usually when the ball drops and there's a wrong hire, then it's like, HR, maybe that's their fault. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. Everyone is after the universally best talent. Well, I'm sorry, but this seems kind of true. I don't know. Does anyone want it?
No, I hate it.
No, you don't need best talents for all the jobs.
Nice.
For some jobs you just need good specialists.
So
Average
they
one.
will
Good point.
I like the way you have sort of like
different angle.
yeah, different angle.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's so. So
Yeah.
yes, it is false. Definitely. It's just.
And then what we were talking earlier as well, that we're having a lot of these conversations, by the way, with a lot of people, that I want the best talent, but they don't understand what's the best talent for their organization. I think this was like the third time I already mentioned.
Honestly, and I don't think that there is a universally best talent. I mean, yeah.
It's what's best for you, what's right for you. That's the difference.
Okay, the more stages and stakeholders involved in the recruitment process, the more likely it is for them to be successful.
What do you think?
So do we need more people? True or false?
The more pair of eyes who are actually checking out the talent, is it going to result in a better outcome? What do you think?
The merrier?
More the merrier?
It's some kind connected to the previous question about who is responsible for hiring. So on some stages you should invite stakeholders and so on to make a final decision or whatever. I think it's not necessary to have stakeholders or whatever on every step. Why?
We said the more the merrier. I would say the more the costier. That's actually part of the preparation or the calibration stuff as well. Who actually need to be part of that process and be really critical about that. When you add up the costs, like people who are part of the interviews, it costs loads of money. And I was in one organization where we were scaling and there was a CEO and the organization was his baby, I understand that. But when you're scaling and you're hiring, like tripling, and you wanted to be part of all the recruitment processes, and we had actually engineers who said, we don't want to speak to your CEO, like we don't speak the same language, it's fine. So, and it cost a lot of money, he couldn't be a CEO because he was hiring all the time. So it's again like, where's the value coming from?
So it's to have strategically more people.
Simplicity. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Authenticity in hiring is crucial for the success of all the stakeholders involved. I think this is.
What do you think? Is it important to be authentic?
Yes.
Why is it important to be authentic?
Because the true colors will come out anyways.
That's the piggy and the lipstick, right? You come into there. You can put all the bells and whistles in there and then come into the organizations and you're like,
I'm sorry. That was my mistake for the presentation.
wrong answer here. The right answer is true.
Yes, it is true.
Yeah.
So that was the last question, actually. The thing. So I don't know if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask for this part, and
Any comments? Any takeaways? Any aha moments? Any confirmations?
or experiences.
For the smaller companies, what is the strategy, the right way to be involved more people? For example, we have 2 or 3, not 3, people working in the HR management, or also the manager to be involved in the process, or just strictly the HR specialist job? In a smaller company, not big.
Yeah. Well, my story is slightly different because I'm usually brought into the organizations when they start scaling. So for a very long time, I'm in the stage where I'm a one human bank, which means I'm sort of like wearing very many different hats. The truth is, I don't like recruitment. I'm an introvert. Talking to people all day, it drains me. And there are much better people who are doing that, and they give the best experience, and I'm much better at other things. Which is why I've always sort of like hired the people who are the best in the talent acquisition, and actually trusting and giving them the ownership to work on this process. So I feel like my skills are better somewhere else, and there are people who are specialized in actually driving that the process. So not the whole team, rather than having one specialist.
Or also maybe outsourcing, is one of the ways of doing it as well. I mean, you can calculate like what's more better investment for you and for your organization as well.
So let's say if you compile a team or a company of diverse individuals across various backgrounds and various ages, do you believe in such events as team building, and how would you do your work if you had to do a team building for a very diverse group of people? Mm-hmm. And does it work in the first place?
Mm-hmm. My strategy is always, thank you for the question, my strategy is always talk to the people. What happens very often is like HR starts like, oh, we need to come up with the best ideas, this is what we assume people want, yeah? Everyone wants to go and play darts or do bowling or, I don't know, Pizza Friday. No. Very often people have completely different motivators, and it's actually having these conversations and understanding and getting that input from there. That's for one. And it's actually, I believe in not forcing people, like that should be something that, okay, that's voluntary, that's like a way, because there are people who actually thrive, doing that. And also like they don't need so much the human connection, and actually looking at the individual and how you can balance the individual and the team part in the best way. And bringing these diversities as much as you can and actually build a dream team around that. But I don't believe in one sort of model fitting everyone. I think this gingerbread shaped like solutions and trying to squeeze people in that, it doesn't work.
But in terms of team building though, I always had this question too. Don't you need to start someplace? So do something actually without necessarily forcing people or, being like, you have to do this now, but start somewhere.
Yeah, and you can learn through that experience as well. But again, I'm reverse engineer here. I can give you an example. Very many years ago, when I was working in iGaming across different different locations. We had a hub in Tallinn, we had a hub in Malta, and we had also a headquarters in Sweden. So we started this Pizza Fridays, and lunchtime, it worked a treat in Estonia. We had actually quite a lot of people coming there. They enjoyed the pizza lunch. Malta, nobody turned up. Like literally the pizzas were standing there. And we were like gutted. We kept like trying to do it for like a couple of weeks, like nobody came. And actually the Swedes were very like nicely straightforward. They said, we don't do Pizza Fridays. We actually want to like leave earlier, and we want to have like Thursday fikas. Okay, so kind of way I could have asked them like, we're thinking of doing these kind of things, what would you rather have, or does this work? Okay, we got to the result, and Maltese, they actually wanted to have like Friday night barbecues on a terrace and beers and then go into the club, which would never probably work in Estonia and Sweden for sure as well. And these are things that are coming through the conversations. So you can test and trial and crush and learn from that, or you can actually have these conversations proactively and find out.
Yeah, having those difficult conversations, and also at the end of the day, I mean, yes, there's a lot of outliers, but at the end of the day, you can also put a number, specific number, and have this data behind the human being, right?
That's great, and thank you for the question. I hope we help. Thank you all very much for being here with us and helping us explore everything here about the hiring process. Thank you, Katri and Hanno.
Thank you, Maria.
And see you at the party